Hi there, I'm Matt Donnelly of RotoBaller, and we are on to week number 2 of the NFL season. That means we got more starts and sits advice, and we are talking about the running back position. So let's dive right into the video. Let's talk about who you're starting in week number 2. And first off, you are starting Travis Etienne versus the Kansas City Chiefs. We saw how explosive with a limited number of snaps that Jahmyr Gibbs was against his Chiefs team on Thursday Night Football. Then again, that was without Chris Jones, who on Monday reached an agreement to rejoin the team. The question is, will Jones be ready in time for this contest? Against the Colts, Etienne would finish with 77 yards on the ground and score while averaging 4.3 yards per attempt. But here's the kicker. He also had a surprising 5 receptions for 27 yards. Now that's not a big deal to most people, but for a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars to start throwing the ball to Travis Etienne, that is a big deal. Think of Etienne as basically David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs all rolled into one here in week number 2. The second running back that you need to be starting is Jamal Williams versus the Carolina Panthers. Look, Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson each had themselves a day running against this Panthers front. A Panthers front that, I may add, allowed a fantasy high 44.7 fantasy points to the running back position last week. That's 9 receptions for 46 yards and a score. That's 131 yards and a pair of scores on the ground. Look for Jamal Williams to be featured in this favorable week 2 matchup. A third running back that you should feel comfortable starting this week is Rashad White versus the Chicago Bears. After watching what Aaron Jones did against this Bears team, averaging 4.6 yards per carry on the ground and adding 86 yards on 2 receptions, I feel pretty good about Rashad White's chances here in this contest. I thought that the additions to this Bears defense that included Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards would help this Bears run defense. So far, that has not been the case, as they allowed 185 yards and 2 touchdowns to Jones and the Packers last week. Need another running back to start? How about Tyler Algier versus that Green Bay Packers team? Arthur Smith, he doesn't care that his quarterback had more receptions than his stud wide receiver, and he certainly doesn't care about our fantasy teams. What he does care about is running the ball. We all knew that you were starting Bijan Robinson last week, and we all know that you're starting him again this week. What we didn't see coming was Tyler Algier getting 15 carries and a pair of touchdowns. Now that was a surprise to everybody. You don't go chasing points, and you certainly don't go chasing waterfalls, but Tyler Algier, he certainly ain't no scrub. Also, Green Bay, they allowed the Bears, yes, the Bears backs, to score 33.3 fantasy points just a week ago. So who am I sitting? Well, the first one, it may be a bit of a shocker to you. It's Austin Ekeler versus the Tennessee Titans. We already know that Austin Ekeler is dealing with an ankle injury. He is going to be limited or not practicing at all this week. We also know that you're probably not going to sit him, but you need to be tempering those expectations ahead of week number 2. On one side, you have the Titans, who are stout against the run. We saw it last year, and we saw it again in week number 1, holding Jamal Williams to just 2.5 yards per carry. Now, the Titans' run defense, we know that that's good. However, the pass defense, not so much, as they allowed 3 Saints pass catchers to haul in at least 5 catches and 60 yards apiece. PPR, Ekeler, you may still feel the need to start, but standard leagues, I have to think that there are better options out there that it's probably not a bad idea to consider at this point. Another running back that I'm sitting this week is Brian Robinson, and Antonio Gibson for that matter, against the Denver Broncos. Look, I feel so used. I sat there believing that this Washington Commanders backs, they were going to pop off last week in a great matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. If it wasn't for Robinson's receiving touchdown, neither one of these backs was getting the job done. Look, they were both averaging less than 3.2 yards per carry, and now they face a Broncos team that allowed just 10.8 fantasy points to Josh Jacobs and the Raiders last week. And Jacobs was actually the best back the Raiders had, and all he did was average 2.5 yards per carry himself. Number 3 on the must-sit list, it's Javonte Williams versus that very same Washington Commanders defense. Now, it was a pleasant surprise to see Williams get 13 carries and 4 receptions in that first game back since his injury. However, that Raiders defense, it's not nearly as good as the Commanders unit there that was led by Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen, who limited James Conner to just 62 yards on 14 attempts. So let's hit the ground running with the week 2 running back starts and sits. Start him, Travis Etienne versus the Chiefs. Jags use him in the passing game, which is what we've all been waiting for. Start him, Jamal Williams versus Carolina. Carolina was tore up on the ground last week, courtesy of Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. Jamal Williams will do the same in week number 2. Start him, Rashad White versus Chicago. The Bears haven't looked like they improved much from last season when it came to stopping running backs from producing. This week, it's White's turn. Start him, Tyler Algier versus Green Bay. Algier has standalone value in his own right and faces a Packers team that allowed the 4th most fantasy points just a week ago. Sit him, Austin Ekeler versus Tennessee. Now, it's not a sit per se, but it's definitely a buyer beware as this Titans run defense is legit. Sit him, Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson versus Denver. You are out of the circle of trust, my friends. This week's matchup is more difficult than last. Sit him, Javonte Williams versus Washington. Williams was happy to see volume last week. Not so happy to see Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen this week. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the RotoBaller YouTube channel for plenty more fantasy football analysis.